Google has also helped destroy profits in the Android ecosystem for everybody pretty much except Google and Samsung. And this is really, they're just bailing out one of their favorite brands, one of their favorite companies that's helped them out along this time and hasn't gotten that much out of it in HTC. I mean, am I wrong, Henry?
No, you are not wrong, and they are doing it intelligently, though. They're effectively matching what Apple has, which is the design capabilities and the integration. Going back 10 years, one of the big theories, which I advocated, was the smartphone market was going to follow the PC market. Software would be separate. Somebody would own the operating system. You'd build on top of it. Apple shattered that. Now hardware and software are integrated. People build on the whole ecosystem, and Google is obviously trying to compete with that. But as we know from Apple, building hardware and software and great products is only one part of it. Now you have to learn how to distribute it. Apple has the stores. This doesn't fix that problem.
Jason, if Google gets it right on this, can they do kind of a Chromebook type of deal? I mean, would that kind of pressure the entire market on pricing, or are we still going to be left with, you know, a similar ecosystem?
Yeah, I think they have a delicate balance here. One, they want to keep Huawei and Samsung motivated to make Android phones, but they also need to have a cutting-edge phone to show off the software capabilities and to drive the market. It's very similar to the approach Microsoft is taking with the Surface, and it's a great acquisition, I think. It's not a lot of money. It gets them a ton of talent, and it keeps them in the game. And right now, you know, Apple is looking particularly powerful with their AR kit, what they've done with the watch, making progress there. And Google has just, you know, been kind of terrible at putting out a world-class phone and updating the operating system. So I like it as a talent acquisition, and I love it as a blocker. What if Samsung decides at some point, or Huawei decides they don't want to be part of the Android ecosystem? This is a great way for them to have the ability to build world-class phones that compete.
And Henry, is anybody else also feeling like Google's hardware approach gets a little bit odder as the years go by? I mean, you got Nest over here doing its thing.
Which, by the way, had updates yesterday.
Nest had updates. They're doing the home security thing, which I think is a great idea. It's a space that's increasingly crowded, but one where I think there's a lot of potential. But you got Nest doing things on the one side, and then at the same time, you got Google with its own brands. They're not all tied together. There's not one central place to get them all. I mean, can they really do that long term, or do they have to bring it all under one umbrella? I mean, Apple's got Beats too, so it's not like Google's the only one.
No, I think over time, unifying it will make it easier, but it's very difficult. It took Microsoft a long time before they were successful with the Surface. Huge skepticism around that beforehand. Hardware is what Apple does first, and people have talked about Apple's need to beef up its software business. That is where Google is great. So each of these companies is coming in with their own strength, and hardware's tough. So this is Google's third or fourth shot at it. Maybe they'll get it right this time.
But, I mean, everybody, Henry, Amazon, Facebook, right? You could draw a line from here back to Google Glass.
Let's look at Amazon. Amazon is very successful now because it invented a new product category. When they went into the phone market, it was a disaster. And they went into the tablet market. They have a much lower price tag. It's working for their strategy, but it's different. But they've made waves because they invented this whole new category.
We don't know how successful they are, we should say. They haven't given us any numbers on units or profits, so it feels like it's successful, yeah.
We'll have to see. Meanwhile, the largest tech firms continuing to feel pressure politically as lawmakers from Europe prepare that massive tax crackdown on Silicon Valley. Congress taking aim at Google and Facebook ads. And announced today, Twitter says executives will meet with Senate Intel Committee members next week related to Russia's role in the 2016 election. Jason, you've got Zuckerberg on the cover of BW as the magazine describes multiple and growing political crises. How does this feel out in Silicon Valley?
Yeah, this is a complete and utter disaster for Zuckerberg and Facebook. A company of this scale, with this much reach, with this much profits, for them to claim that an election could not be impacted, as he did, Zuckerberg personally said it couldn't be impacted by their network, when in fact the Russians were buying ads, probably using stolen data to target it to swing states. And this is a complete and utter disaster. And I think it's time for us to talk about Facebook regulating, being regulated, since they have no ability to regulate themselves. And Zuckerberg, you know, although he's made 50 state visits, doesn't seem to want to address the major issues. And they have a horrible track record when it comes to privacy. And there are some very specific things that can be done to regulate Facebook's reach. One of them is that all political ads should be transparent Two, the targeting, some targeting maybe shouldn't be allowed, and this stuff has to be audited. And why can't Zuckerberg release the ads that the Russians bought to target minority groups and LGBT groups? Why can't we see them when they could cash the checks of Russians and target them to specific people? I don't get it. It's a lack of leadership, and they need to be regulated.
Good point, Jason. But Henry, at the same time, I mean, the term disaster, it's a big term to use, especially because, to me, this doesn't feel like Equifax. This isn't something I hear people talking about. Can you believe Facebook?
It's worse.
I don't even know if I want to use Facebook again. Henry, put your take on exactly the scale of this problem for Facebook. Is it a disaster?
From a business perspective, it is small. They have all the money in the world to build systems and get it right and improve it. Is not going to be that expensive for them. But I think from a big picture, and Jason's a great person to comment on this, this is the slow motion collision of Silicon Valley idealism. We're just platforms. We don't get into that media and communication stuff. We don't like that. It's distasteful. To now they've become the most powerful media and communications companies in the world. They are going to be subject to the same sort of regulation that the media industry always has been. It is critical. Imagine if NBC had been used by Russia to swing our election, and it was discovered later. Imagine what would happen in Washington. That is now going to happen here, and these companies are going to become much more regulated and watched, as they should be.
When it comes to the question of regulation, I mean, it's very kind of commonly thrown out there that maybe they'll ultimately be regulated like a utility. And Jason, I mean, when you're regulated like a utility, it's usually in exchange for the use of some kind of public franchise. It's the airwaves. It's some territory if you're a cable company. What would they be exchanging? What would they get?
Yeah, they would get to not go to jail for, taking Russian money and not doing their job of reviewing ads. If you try to, buy a profane license plate, it gets stopped by incompetent government agencies. For Facebook to sit there and pretend like they don't have the ability to look at the ads when they, in fact, kick back a large percentage of ads is ridiculous. And here's a very easy way to regulate this. Every Facebook user should be able to pay to have a privacy-based and ad-free experience, the equivalent of what Facebook makes on advertising for users. That should be mandated by the government. In other words, if they make $15 per user per year, I should be able to pay $15 or $20 a year to opt out, and I should be able to opt out of any targeting I want. And you know what? Our government tends to be bought and sold on these issues, and people have a lot of influence. But the American people, when they see these ads, and I've heard that they're really, really troubling, when the American people see these ads, they're going to realize that Zuckerberg going out to these 50 states, he's on an apology tour. He's not trying to understand people better. He's out there apologizing for what's going to come out. And they must be regulated, and all political ads have to be auditable by everybody in America. Facebook ads.com.
It is amazing.
And you should be able to search all these ads. It's disgusting.
It's hard to get into his head, Henry, but the interview with Business Week, he seems to express incredulity. He cannot believe that people would think he had anything but benevolence in mind, right?
Again, this is the idealism in Silicon Valley that you will somehow be able to build the world's most powerful monopoly on media and communications distribution and never be held responsible for what
never have to deal with people who have malicious intent.
Absolutely. And so these worlds are colliding. I do think Facebook on the other side, Sheryl Sandberg handled the discovery of the ad targeting well, fell on the sword, very upfront. Facebook can get out in front of this. And I think, to Jason's point, if they are regulated to that extent that they have to offer certain products, it's going to be a disaster. So they have to get out in front of it.
Traditionally, the folks in Silicon Valley, I feel like, hate advertising, kind of hate content, sort of allow for it, but really the technology, the code is what they really love. Advertising is this necessary evil. It feels more and more like Silicon Valley is being pulled into, you got to learn to love content, you got to learn to love advertising, and you got to treat it as important and effective. And for me, that's the lesson from this that's going to carry.
Really quick, before we say goodbye, there's 5 of us talking. How many of us check Facebook more than, say, twice a month?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes? I'm off.
100%.
I'm not on Facebook.
Twitter addict.
And Jason?
I do use Facebook.
I'm a Twitter addict, but I have to check Facebook like once every day or two. Yeah.
I think
no choice.
But you have to, in a way.
Yeah.
Right. Jason, Henry, thanks, guys.
Great to be here.
Discussion.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
We do want to